Hello, everyone. I just realized that we're actually 1 minute early, or like 30 seconds early. We're on time, in other words. Hey, everyone who's tuning in today, and welcome to the second episode of the second season of our live stream series here on LinkedIn. I hope that everyone who's tuning in has had a great day so far and got your lunch ready in case you're in a time zone where it makes sense to have lunch right now. So today we have a very special guest joining us, Louise Vanerell, who is the COO of the Upskill company. And today we're going to dive deeper into how to upskill and reskill tomorrow's workforce. Just wanted to check in with you first. How are you today? How are you feeling? How has your day been so far?
My day so far has been really good. Thank you for having me, first of all. I'm very much looking forward to talking about this topic, of course. It's close to heart and something that we talk about and do every day. So, very much looking forward to this half an hour. And thank you, everyone, for sitting in. So far, a really good day, but I'm hoping that it's going to be even better.
Yeah, I feel like we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Everything good happens after lunch is my motto. Amazing. So, yes, so today we are for sure, no doubt, living in a very fast paced society, in a fast paced world, and a fast changing world that is becoming more and more digitally advanced, and where the need for specific skills is constantly shifting. And we actually shared a report like in the bio for this particular event. And according to the World Economic Forum, in the report that they conducted, over half of global employees will have to upskill and reskill their workforce by 2025 to keep up with the evolution of jobs. So it's, a topic that everyone should have on their agenda if they don't have it yet. So the big question is, and also like it's a massive topic, so we're probably not gonna be able to cover all of it today, but I feel like it's a good start at least. So how do we, adapt to these new demands and make sure to actually like future-proof our organizations and our workforces? That's one thing that we're gonna dive deeper into today. But first, I just wanted to ask you, for people that tune in that don't know you and don't know about the work that you do at the Upskill company, can you tell us a little bit more about the Upskill company and then how you're helping companies navigate upskilling, reskilling?
Sure can. So the Upskill company is a company that works with trying to at least make the skills gap within tech slightly smaller. It's easy to fall into a numbers game, and I know you posted that report, and there have been plenty of them floating around, especially here on LinkedIn. And it's worth mentioning all the time that we have about 70,000 people missing in tech only in Sweden. So it's a crucial problem, and that's people missing today. That's not like in 10 years' time or stuff. It's today. And of course, we need to do whatever we can to try and bring more people into tech. And tech has, for many reasons, which we're not going to be covering today, has been a very segmented group of people that go into. So it's been a trouble or a problem for such a long time that we don't get enough people, and not enough in a broad perspective. Like, we need different people going into tech. So what the
Mm,
Upskill company does is that we try to we make this competence. Instead of trying to just find people who do it today, we are taking part together with our clients to make sure that we create this competence and the skills that's needed, instead of just going out looking for it. So we find people with potential, we combine them with tailor-made intensive learning programs, and then we do this sort of consultancy period, which eventually will turn into hopefully employment with the client. So
right.
that's the elevator pitch.
Amazing. And how do you find these candidates or people that are eager to step into a new career path potentially?
Well, I think the joy of it is that we don't know who we're looking for because
Mm.
um, they aren't working within tech today, most likely, or most of the people that we have been having as consultants do a career shift. So they switch from one career into tech. And how do we find them? And how do you look for potential? And of course, this is something we could do, a talk about only what is potential and how do we find it. But the short answer is that we need to look for people who have the problem solving capabilities, who are I wouldn't say fast learners necessarily, but who are have a very learning mindset, because of
Mm.
course if you're going to be new to something, and being a beginner is something that a lot of people find kind of frightening, you need to have a perspective on what it is that you're going to do. So we need to find motivated people who knows why they're doing this shift, why they want to go into tech, and who also have this sort of adaptability mindset. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking like, oh, I don't know shit. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to be, a complete newbie. But I always keep telling our consultants and the candidates when they go to the process, like, no, you don't start from scratch. You always start from the experience that you've gathered and gained through everything else that you've done. Now you just have to adapt and place it into a new field of knowledge. And I
Mm.
think that mindset is the most important part, to be able to shift and be like, oh, here's something that I can put my knowledge that I know about these things, and I can adapt them and I can put them into this field of knowledge.
Exactly. I think that part is so interesting, just about learning itself and how we're redefining what learning is, and the fact that we're always learning. It's a lifelong thing, it's a never ending process, right? And we're living in a world where we change jobs and careers more often than we did, back in the day. So it's more crucial. And also, like, different people have different access to learning as well. So people probably have, networks where they have people like within their networks with those skills that they can be mentored by. So having an actual program that gives you that support and that the knowledge that you need is, I feel like, is crucial, not only to, make sure that people do what they love and make sure that we future proof our organizations, but also giving people, like, putting it on the same kind of level, so you're giving access to everyone to learn, and not only like a few privileged ones.
No, exactly. And I think, it's been a privilege, as you say, to be able to switch. It used to be a lot more constant, but I mean, the whole professional role has changed so much. I mean, my mother is one of those people who just, she started working in a company and then she worked there until she retired. And
Mhm.
that's the case with so many people in our older generations. While as today, that may not be the case. We don't have the same sort of work structure. We don't have the same possibilities to even do that. But I think it's important to also combine that with, we actually, or a lot of people have the possibility today to actually switch. And of
Mm.
course, I meet a lot of people in our consultants who make a very hard shift from being maybe a lawyer or being, working in marketing or whatever. And they do a very proper, like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. And it could be that you're, doing a slightly less hard shift, like maybe working as you know, around tech, and then deciding, no, I want to do coding as well. And then you actually learn how to code. Um,
Mm.
but I think a lot of people should really see what potential they have, and to see what competences they have that they can bring into a new skill. We talk a lot about the difference between competences that you have, no matter what, and the skill set that you have. And your skill set is only like tools. And when you need different tools, then you get different skills. And we need to be more flexible about how easy it is to get new skills, because it's not rocket science. It's not like you need to do 10 years of avid research. You just have to start somewhere.
Exactly. And I love the thing you mentioned earlier, the fact that we never start from zero, right? So we never really start from scratch, because we take everything that we learn in other aspects of our lives and integrate that. And that's also how innovation is born. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, coming from this perspective, or I live this type of life, and I have been in these type of roles, and you bring that all together. It's the kind of like a basket that you bring, and then you know pick up different things along the way, and that's the beauty of it, right? So it's not
Yeah.
you're never, because I think that now it's just me. It's called killgissa in Swedish. It's like I think,
Mhm.
but I don't have any facts. But just being a beginner, I think, is a frightening thing for humans in general. To like, we don't want to be the beginner. We want to be good at things, you know, instantly. So I think that's a very humbling journey as well. But we never really do start from scratch. We always have, you know, things to bring to the table and perspectives to bring to the table, and already a skill set. So
Mm. But I think that sort of brings to mind as well that when we started, when you did the introduction to this talk, you mentioned like we need to have a lifelong learning perspective, and companies today need to have that in place. Like, how do we actually actively work with learning? And of course, there's so many experts out there who knows so many things about this. So I'm not going to claim to be like some sort of oracle when it comes to this topic. There are plenty others. But I think being a beginner is something that more people on a general term, and now I'm just talking like plainly out in society and in people's life, that we should sort of dive into the feeling of being a beginner, because that's really fun. It's really fun to be new at something and to be
mm,
like, oh, I'm just, I'm just on the surface, the first couple of steps into um, playing out the whole field of stuff that I didn't know before. But it's, I think, and I've been thinking of this, of course, a lot in my in the role I have. Like, why are we so afraid to be beginners? Because when you're talking about learning at work and having a learning culture, which I mean, all the companies today say that they are, but are they really? Because
yeah.
if you are a learning company, then you have to sort of celebrate um, being a beginner. It's going to take a lot longer time for somebody who's new at something to do a certain task, but it's going
Mm,
to be well invested time. And that's important. And I think, as you said, we have a big skills shortage, and we have a fast-paced technical world where things goes really, really, really fast. And all the technical teams out there are usually under a lot of pressure. So there's rarely room for somebody to be like, okay, I can do it, but it's going to take me like twice the amount of time it's going to take for somebody more senior. But if you
mm,
want to have a learning culture properly, then you need to enforce that, and you need to celebrate, like, yeah, it's going to take twice as long, but it's going to be worth it. And go ahead, do it. And
exactly.
I know, yeah, we are so used to celebrating like seniority and expertise, while maybe we should switch that around and be like, the ones actually daring to be beginners again, those are the ones that we should celebrate.
Because that's how you create an organization with longevity,
Mm,
right? So it's,
mm,
that's and I feel like sometimes when you talk about investment, especially investing in people, it might, and especially in like the recruitment field, like we're talking a lot about attracting candidates, but then the retention part often gets
mm.
lost in the way somehow. It's like we just need to get these talents in, but then like how do we retain them? How to make sure that they learn and grow and feel, you know, ownership over their role and are comfortable in this organization and so on. But anyways, I wanted to kind of shift it to the company perspective.
Mm.
So how can companies best respond to this skill shortage, and especially though within the tech field, and create more like a long-term effects to make sure that they tackle that in a good way.
Good question. Not an easy one to answer. I'll tell you. But I'm
We
happy
can
to.
navigate it together.
Well, there's a lot of question in one there, but I think if we talk about like how to tackle competence supply on a broader scale, like how are companies going to work with finding the competence and the people that they need? And I think we need to shift from finding to building,
Mm,
because obviously all of you looking for tech people out there, you know that you're all just looking in the same pool of people who's not that big. So there's not a lot of fish in the
Yeah.
sea, and we need to bring more fish in. So we need to build competence instead of trying to find it. And of course, that's a long term, but we need to have a long term strategic focus if we want to, invest in our future. And if you as a company want to make sure that you stay innovative and that you stay sustainable, just like you spoke about, how do we retain people when we do find them? Then
Mm.
you need to think about it long term, not only solving like the issues that you have today. I need to find X amount of this amount of developer. Like think long term. In 3 years, what do I need? Yeah, 3 years is a long time. Then you have the time to actually make sure that you get those people on the right level if you want to, and if you're willing to put in the time and effort. But of course, I think we also need a shift in mindset regarding skills and competence overall. Like if we're talking about very, very, um, how do you say, a very shifting technical stack. For instance, like you mentioned in the report, 50% is going to need a different skill set than they have today. And if we're
Mm.
just looking at a company's tech stack today, it could be completely different in 3 years' time. So how are you going to find people who can do the work that you need them to do today, but also make sure that you have people who will grow with the company, who, when you actually shift your tech stack, can they shift with it? So we need to change. Like, are you looking for skill or are you looking for competence? Are you looking for people who will actually grow with the competence or with the company and the different um, stuff you're going to encounter future on? And then you can't just look at CVs. You can't just look at merits, what you did the last couple of 10 years. You need to look ahead. What are you going to be able to do in the future?
Right. Yeah, it's so much more than, especially when it comes to learning. There, it's so much more than, or it really has nothing to do what we did in the past.
Mm.
It's more about that curiosity and being eager to learn, and those kind of like soft skills that we need to look into more.
Mm.
I'm just curious about, so what kind of companies do usually reach out to you? How do they portray their challenge? Are they more focused on like what they need right now, or is it more, do people, or do companies generally have that like long-term perspective?
It usually starts like with every sort of problem. It usually starts with the problem that they have today. And I had one of my clients, or well, then partners at a client side, and we were in a discussion like, why did they pick this topic that they chose for one of the projects? And she was so frank, and I love her for it. And she was like, well, we didn't find them 2 years ago, we don't find them today, and we're probably not going to find them in the future either, so let's just do something different. And I mean,
Mm.
that's a very, very good mindset from a company side to be able to think like that. But I think that's sort of the root is always frustration, and being able to realize that you have like business crucial skills gap. And if you haven't found them in the past, then what makes you think you're going to find them in the coming future? Looking in the same ways, because of course that's what we're doing. Like you need to try something different. If you just keep doing the same thing that you've been doing for the past, I don't know how long time, and if that didn't give you the result that you wanted, then you need to try something else. You can't just keep
Mm.
doing something over and over again and suddenly expect that it's going to bring you that, result that you didn't get the last times. So I think it's usually coming from, to give you a proper answer to your question, it usually starts in a very like today problem or need. And when we realize like, okay, we have grounds here for a collaboration where we can do a project together, then we start talking about what it is that they actually need, and then we bring in the long-term perspective, because of course during our intensive learning programs, they roughly about 3 months, you can't be an expert. We're not going to bring you system architects in 12 weeks. That's impossible. We're going to bring you junior competence, but it's junior competence is going to be growing exponentially over the coming years. But I really like this part of our programs, or our projects with our clients, because I call this like the kill your darlings phase, because they
Mm.
usually come with us, and everyone who's recruiter know these things. You get this wish list of like, yeah, we want them to know this whole full list of stuff. That's going to be really handy. And you're like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have 12 weeks. We're not going to be able to cover all of those things. So we need to
It's
bring it
like,
down.
someone who never
Yeah,
cooked. It's like, I want you to cook on a Michelin level now, please. Like, it's like, might take a little bit. We need to invest before we expect that kind
we
of
need to cover the basics.
stuff.
um, but that's usually and at first people get really like, no, I want everything that I want. And you're like, but you can't have everything. We're going to have to start doing things, agile. We have to start somewhere and then we can take it further. But it usually ends up being really interesting discussions between people in the tech area or the teams that need this sort of competence. And when we start talking about, but what is it that they actually have to know? What do you expect them to do? What kind of work are they going to be doing on a daily basis for the first 6 months? And that's
Mm,
what we cover, because they're going to be learning. They're going to be learning so much stuff when they start working, so you won't believe it. But we need to know, what are they actually going to do on a daily basis for the first 6 months? And then you start realizing, like, okay, yeah, we can find a good ground where they're going to be learning from. So I
mm,
really like that part. That's my favorite part. Because you see like the teams and the technical knowledge and the experts, but also the HR department, they start looking at things from a different perspective. Like, okay, if we need to have this focus, what do we do?
right. Yeah, that's coming back to something you said earlier about the mindset and also adapting to, uh, I mean, the world that we live in. I think I know we've been talking a lot about the pandemic. I feel like pandemic comes up in every forum ever. But it's a good reference because that's, was a universal test for everyone to see how well adapt we are and kind of forced into change.
Mm.
So, but going back to the mindset, how do you think like that shift? Because it sounds like that's a very important part of like a really important realization for companies to then work on getting the right skill sets into their company. Does it happen mainly through conversations, or do you have another technique or tool that you use in order to kind of like shift that mindset?
I wish I did. It was something I could do instantly, but no. Of course, it's a gradual thing. And I think going back to, you need to have this very crucial problem to start with, where you are sort of, as we did with the pandemic, like you don't have a choice. You have to try something else. And
Mm,
I wouldn't call it that you need to be desperate, because of course not. But it's borderline desperate when you need to force yourself to be like, okay, I have to try something new. And when
mm,
you start doing that, you're going to be very reluctant to be like, oh no, is this really going to work out? Maybe it's not going to do that. And then eventually, as you start seeing the kind of potential that we bring in these people, and when you see what they've actually covered and what they've learned during the 12 weeks of training, and when they come out to the teams, and I think that's where the actual mind shift is starting, because then you get somebody like a person, because up until that point, it's only theory. And it's only like me sitting here selling you the idea that, of course, you're going to be looking at, potential instead of merits. But when you actually get that, flesh and bone person coming into your team, knowing that they didn't know maybe shit about this topic 12 weeks ago, and now
right.
they're actually coming in and contributing, that's when the actual mind shift is starting to happen, because you realize like, oh, it is working. And I
Mm,
think seeing that over time, that's the proper perk of working with what I do, not only on the company side and seeing the sort of receiving teams, or what to call them, but maybe even more so in the people that we bring in, to see that they actually realize like, oh, I don't have to be afraid of new stuff. I know that I can learn, and I'll know I have to just start from the start, and then I'll take it from there. So
yeah, it's
they're
kind of
the
like,
best.
sorry.
they're the best ambassadors for actually realizing that it's we need to shift our minds about these things.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like see it to believe it. Or
Mhm.
and the investments require you to not see it before you have to go on a limb before you get a return. So, but I yeah, I guess when you actually like, oh, there's an actual human learning something and it's more tangible, it's easy
Mhm.
to continue to invest in that.
Yeah.
Um, so how like the work that you do at the upskill company, how does that differ from like more traditional ways of tackling competence supply?
Well, the short answer, of course, is building competence instead of just looking for it. I would say that that's the main focus, or the main difference. And all of these things that we've covered during our talk here today has sort of goes into that one. Yeah, you need to shift your view on competence versus skills. You need to have a more long-term perspective of what it is that you need, and you need to sort of face your organization, or face the need of the organization. Like, what do we actually need? And I think one thing that's we're usually missing when we're talking about bringing in more junior competence is what you said about retaining. Because if you have this like amazing team of senior developers, just to take an example, um, who are extremely skilled and who are experts, then you need to do all you can to retain them. And if you bring in junior competence who are more than willing to do, grunt work, that's
Mm.
going to take a lot of load off your more senior competence and coworkers, which is going to make them happier at work as well, because they actually get to do the stuff that they have, the skill set to do. And I think that's usually something that we're missing when we're talking about more junior competence. Grunt work.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. So what is your personal perspective on lifelong learning? Why do you believe that it's important to invest? And do you invest in your own lifelong learning journey?
Yeah, I do. I usually, when people ask me how I ended up doing these things, I have a hard time answering, because I had a very not linear route to doing these things. My academical background is in history, and I've been working as a project manager in any and all fields that you can imagine. And I think being curious is probably the one thing that you need to have in mind in order to have a learning mindset. And to not be afraid of doing stuff that you don't know.
Mm.
Um, in this field that I'm working with now, when it comes to both tech and people, and people's um, development in all the different fields, I could spend my full working days only reading about interesting stuff that other very smart people have done either research or whatever about. And I try to digest as much as possible, but it's really hard. And then I find myself deep into some astrophysics hole, and my brain is melting because I can't really understand anything. And then I have to start reading about how the brain functions again, just to get it to work again. So I think just being curious, because having that sort of diverse uh, diverse thinking, because you never know where you're going to find stuff that you can use in some other instance. So for me, having a learning mindset is not to only read up on things that actually have a very good fit with what you do. You have to just be open-minded and realize
Mm.
that you're never going to be done, I think. I
Yeah.
realized that was not a very specific answer to your question, but I like to read, so I read up on everything that I can.
No, it was perfect. And it's interesting because like the more we like the skill shortage and the advancement of technology is one part, but then the other part is like we mentioned a bit during this conversation, it's the mindset and changing the way we view learning and talking about it in a different way. Because, like you said, back in the day, I remember my best friend, her grandma, she got a lifelong working contract. So when she graduated high school, she went to the factory in the town that she lived in, and she got a lifelong contract. And that was, 2 generations ago. So a lot has changed. So that was like there. That was her learning curve professionally, at least, and that has fundamentally changed. So how do we, embrace learning and make it more like less of a unknown, scary, I don't want to be a begin, like going into something new, to really embracing that, and especially from the top to the bottom, if we have leaders and management to actually encourage learning and encourage like that type of growth, it will make people more comfortable to embrace that themselves. I think both professionally, but also personally.
Mm.
I'm seeing
Agree.
also that. Sorry, I'm seeing that we're running out of time here. I had more questions, and that's also the case when you're having a conversation. It's like more and more and more questions pops up in your head. So I feel like we have to do like a part 2, where we dig even deeper into this super exciting topic.
Would love to.
Um, Amazing. So I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and knowledge and a fresh new perspective on what it means to be learning and how companies can, set a solid strategy and look from the other end, which is, okay, how do we create competence rather than, looking for existing ones. So thank you so much for joining today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We will be back in a month with a new episode. More on that on our LinkedIn page, so stay tuned. And for everyone who tuned in and had to jump out for some reason, we will also put this on YouTube. So if you didn't have time to catch it all, you will be able to watch it afterwards. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a beautiful day. Bye.
Bye.